So three bureaucrats discussing what can we do with the bureaucracy, both Indian as well as the US bureaucracy. That's if people think that US bureaucracy is great, whatever little experience I have, I find that to be as bad as the Indian bureaucracy. Maybe the system there is different, and because they have the revolving door policy, so that kind of takes care of it. So,
So
how do you look at that
the revolving
statement,
door
Abhijit?
policy
Let me
gives
start
you.
with you. How do you look at that statement from the Prime Minister? And I think some of your trouble with the Gujarati food is because you knew that you were going to deal with that statement as soon as you came in.
Nah, nah, nah. So the thing is, I was thrilled when he said that. Right. And remember, that was the same week or the following week when he said, the government has no business being in business again. The issue is, the first time when he said all these dulcet things, he never acted on them for 7 years. And finally, he says them again. I'm hoping he will act. I'm always hopeful. But, I seldom measure people by the words. I always measure people by their actions. So I am waiting. I am watching. For me, the benchmark will be the privatization of Air India. Uh, they seem to have sort of dug their feet in with the bank privatizations, uh, trying to postpone them and things like that. Let's see. Uh, for me, the entire judgment this term is going to be based on privatizations, because that is one of the most important steps you do in reducing bureaucracy, both the control bureaucracy as well as the operational bureaucracy. But coming back to your point, Sanjay ji, on American bureaucrats, it's both a positive and a negative. On one hand, American bureaucrats, because they're very well staffed and serviced and trained, they actually do a lot of groundwork, unlike, say, our bureaucrats abroad who are not properly trained and woefully understaffed, so that every one of them can become a ambassador at some point in their career. The downside is that revolving door bureaucracy, because people understand that to get into the government, you've got to virtue signal. So you don't end up speaking the truth, you end up virtue signaling. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that in the current administration, especially, there are way too many virtue signalers. And in the previous administration, it was completely undermined by the number of inside uh, 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 enemies that the Trump administration had, which is sort of a running theme even with the Modi administration, because they seem to have so many enemies from within. And this sort of putra moh ke badle babu moh seems to undermine a lot of the things that they do.
Like either the Indian bureaucracy or the American bureaucracy. But of course, the litmus test, as very soon after this statement, I think within a month of that, we have this classic situation where one of the BJP government goes and imposes the classic bureaucratic quota system in the private sector, and says that okay, 75% of you, all of you, will now be checked by our inspectors, who will go and not only check your registers, they will also check each and every employee. So how's that for bureaucracy?
So I was just looking at that entire thing about the Haryana reservation. And I'm wondering, the children of bureaucrats in me tells me that this could have only come out of the mind of a bureaucrat, that particular law.
I agree with you 100%.
Because that
Nobody
unique
can be more
level,
clueless than a bureaucrat.
yeah, that unique level of cranial rectal inversion is it's like how the Gangetic dolphin is only found in the Ganges. That particular cranial rectal inversion is only found in a certain kind of UPSC pass person. So on the other hand, our politicians aren't exactly terribly smart. So when you see things like this happen, You don't know what it is. The problem is the bureaucrat and the politician has to act as a check and balance. And to be fair to the bureaucrats, in the early stages of the Nehru administration, they did in many ways try, sometimes not very successfully, but they tried to rein in some of his more reckless adventurism. But they were a disciplined bureaucracy because they ultimately did what they were told by their elected masters. The problem right now is it's not a check and balance anymore when the political executive is completely clueless how to control you, and the political executive is also clueless on how to run an office, too much micromanagement, and they're generally clueless about economics and other things as well. But jab, it's one of those cases where, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So that is the situation you have right now. But what do? We're stuck with it. Tell me a way out.
Quite right, Vibhuti ji. Now you are on the other side. You are on this side where the investors were looking at India with great anticipation, if I might say so, and because you are there lining up these investments. How did this Haryana thing go down with the American business or the people or the investors who are looking at India?
Well, it is too early to comment upon that part. However, it is important to know that one of the biggest frustration that Americans have is that 90% of the economy is in the private sector and the businesses. But the important part is that the biggest frustration that the American has is that India has been an absolute charming opportunity, but it has never realized its potential because you never open up enough. That's the biggest challenge, because they never know what will happen next in the economic reform part of it. These people are businessmen. 90% of the economy is in private sector, including the extra sensitive defense sectors. In our country, we don't trust a businessman. These people trust the businessmen because they are also Americans. They are also citizens. They have as much vested interest in protecting the country. But that is one of the biggest frustrations that American has. That India, the moment, and this is true as well in my opinion, because I came here to champion liberalization program, but you are championing the liberalization program where the base is not changing at all. So I remember very clearly, this was the first ever doing business with India seminar we hosted along with Bear Stearns in Washington, D.C. in Four Seasons. And there was Mr. Suresh Kumar was the IS industry secretary at that time. And he brought the India team. Guess what? With the due respect, they didn't even know how to ask for money. I had to tell him, sir, so far you have been in a position to dispense favors. Now you are coming to ask for money. Your tone, tenor, and the style must change. These people are looking for hints, clear signage. You can't say that I will liberalize 10% now, घूंघट में आधा खोलूंगी फिर पूरा बाद में खोलूंगी, वो नहीं होगा. If you want to come into a relationship, then come open-hearted. Then I will wait. When you are fully ready, then I'll come, because I don't want to go through the loops of struggle of trying to come to the country. So this is one of the biggest things. And I think Prime Minister Modi is trying hard. Abhijit is absolutely right. Saying is easy, talk is easy, but doing things is difficult. And that's what we have to remember one thing, that we Indians particularly, and I can speak as an Indian about this, I have combined two words, sentimental and emotional. And I say we Indians are very sentimental about everything. So America ko aisa karna chahiye. Why don't we fix ourselves first?